Hello again, Middle School Art Club. So just as I was explaining a little bit ago, I wanted to show you also a little bit about working on the Zentangle Pumpkin. So as you can see on this example, I've already done the blue area because remember all of my designs and drawings and Zentangles in that top half are going to be blue because it resembles the sky. On these portions, I'm going to be doing green because it resembles my grass. And then the pumpkins, I'll do orange, and then the stems, I will do brown. So essentially what we're doing is creating the color that we would typically see on these various sections, except instead of just shading or painting or coloring, we are adding Zentangle designs there. And to do this, we will be using some fine tip Sharpies. And you do have the option of adding other materials. You do have the option of coloring in spaces completely solid. You have the option of using black, especially on your pumpkin areas. So we will talk a lot more in Art Club about all of those different options that you do have. But I just wanted to show you briefly a little bit about the outlining and remind you to use a ruler when you need one, especially for straight lines, and to just really take your time, so that you can make sure that each Zentangle design comes across as clearly and neatly as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on my green section because, like I said, I've done the sky. I'm going to do the grass next because just like in our other pumpkin design, we want to work with whatever is furthest away up towards whatever is closest to the viewer. So in this case, I want to do all of my background first. So I've got two different shades of green that I'm going to use here. I've got a lighter green and I've got sort of a darker Kelly green. You can definitely use a variety of greens. If you have more greens than that available, by all means. I have one more that I can use. This is just going to be a slightly different green, so that way I have three options. So then I'm just going to go ahead and pick a section to start in. And I'm going to start right over here, but remember I have straight lines in the spider web, so I'm going to use a ruler or a protractor to make sure that I keep those lines as straight as possible. So I'm just going to line it up. And then very carefully just draw over that line. Now you could certainly alternate colors here, different greens. You could use all one green, you could use one green for the straight line, and a different green for the sort of curvy lines of the spider web. I think what I'm going to do is, in that spider web, I'll use this other green for some of my curved lines. So I'm just going to take my time. Keep in mind here, it's okay if your Sharpie lines, if your outlining does not 100% follow your pencil line. The best thing to do is just try to keep that Sharpie line as smooth and neat as possible, and just know that we will be erasing any of those pencil lines as our last step. So now I've got that spider web section done. It's sort of outlined in a couple different shades of green. So then I might move on to my checkerboard, which I actually want to add some color. So I'm going to start by just outlining my lines again. I'm going to scooch it up a little bit. I'm going to outline this line that's closest to me with sort of my lightest green. And then I'm going to use my medium green in the middle. And then I'll use my darkest green toward the very back line. And then I'll just use my lightest green for all of my diagonal lines. Mostly just because I like that green best. So now I've got my checkerboard sort of in there. So then the next thing that I'm going to do is actually to go ahead and start adding color, because like I said, I wanted to use thicker regular Sharpies to actually make that checkerboard a more solid sort of checkerboard. So I'm just going to come in here, I'm just going to color very neatly. Like so. That one would also be that green. Then I'm going to move on to my next square. Still trying to keep it as neat as I can. I find that it helps to outline the shape first. Give myself sort of a boundary for when I am adding the rest of the color. Just helps me keep it a little neater. And then take your time adding that color in there. You don't have to use Sharpie for this step either. You can use colored pencil, you can use crayon, you can use regular markers, whatever you want to use. And then I've got another green that I'm going to use here. Don't know exactly how much different it's going to be, but we'll find out. So this is a pale green, as you can see. So again, I'm just going to take my sweet old time. So then the next thing I would do would be to go back to my dark green, and I would cycle through coloring that whole section. This whole checkerboard pattern. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me color the entire checkerboard pattern. And instead, I'm going to go ahead and work on outlining this section. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit for you guys. Just so you can see a little bit better of what you're looking at in here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sort of like I did on the blue section right here, I'm going to just start by making the inside circle all one color. You definitely do not have to start with the same color on all of your inside circles if you have a pattern like this. You are in charge of how much or how little your patterns vary. The only sort of requirement is that you have the correct colors in the correct spaces. So the greens for the grass, blues for the skies, and oranges, reds, yellows for the pumpkins. I'm going to use primarily orange just because I want to. So one thing that's going to help, I know a lot of people are always like, oh, I can't make my curves right. I can't get it nice and straight and even. The thing that I have found to help the most, especially with outlining a curved line in Sharpie is just to move my entire arm. So don't put your wrist down per se and only use your wrist. Especially on those bigger lines, the more entire arm movement you get in there, the cleaner and neater and easier those lines will become. So you'll see on some of the smaller lines, I'm probably just using mostly my wrist, but then on that big line that I just did, I moved my whole arm. Same thing on this line. Whole arm is going to move. Then I'm just going to go back to the first screen. And remember, these patterns are called Zentangle. So let yourself relax while you do them. That's kind of the point. Turn the page however often you need, or move yourself. I'm more just moving myself so that I don't mess up your view on the camera. And just kind of moving my angle. So then again, I'll go to the next one. And you would just keep repeating this type of a idea until all of your patterns are completely outlined and all of those pencil lines are covered up. But then remember, if you get off of your pencil line, it's perfectly fine, because the last thing that we'll do is just erase any of those pencil lines that we need to erase. So like I was saying before, I'm not going to sit here and make you watch me finish out this whole thing, but that is essentially the idea. You will just go over all your lines with the correct colors. I'll zoom back up and out so you guys can see. So as you can see here, if I zoom in only on this section, then you see the blues, and then you see the orange designs ready, but they don't have any orange in them yet. And now I've got most of my grass, but I'm going to finish up the checkerboard, and I've got one last section of the green to finish right over here. So those would be the next things that I would be working on. So then what I'm going to do is go ahead and finish this one, and I will actually just take a picture of it and post the finished product on Google Classrooms so that you guys can see sort of the in process like you just watched, and then you'll be able to see the finished product as well. And remember, there are also 2 videos that will be on Google Classrooms to help you with the other idea that we'll be doing. But don't worry about doing all of this on your own at home. I just wanted to get it posted on Google Classrooms for those of you who might miss the meeting or want to work on one of the other ones at home, or might just need a little bit more help during our next art club meeting.